Hello everyone and welcome to the finals of the Julius Baer Generation Cup. The first game just ended and it is an absolute masterpiece. You guys will love this one. If you are just joining in, both of them had to defeat a lot of players to get to the finals. This is the knockout brackets. In the semifinals, Magnus defeated Vincent Keimer and Arjun Erigaisi defeated Kwang Liam Le, and now they meet in the finals, and this is just, the game is breathtaking. You guys will enjoy it. Let's dive straight into it. Even though it's a rapid game, there is quite a lot to enjoy. So Magnus with the white pieces opens with knight to f3. He goes for the Reti opening, d5 by Arjun, g3, and now pawn to g6. The double fianchetto of the King's Indian attack. We have bishop g2, bishop g7, and Magnus castles. We have knight to f6, going for that quick castle, and now pawn to d4 by Magnus. We have castles, and now we have pawn to c3. Here, pawn to c4 is the standard way to play this. Magnus chooses this line that isn't all that popular. He goes c3, sort of a nice way to try and surprise Arjun, and Arjun plays a5, making it a bit difficult for Magnus to expand on the queen side as much as he would want to, and now bishop to f4. Putting pressure on that e5 square, so at some point you know that the knight is coming to e5. And here, there are a couple of games that reach this position. For example, bishop to f5 was played here. It's a well-known game between Kramnik and Maxim Vachier-Lagrave that ended in a draw. But here we have c6, strengthening the d5 pawn, and now knight b to d2 is a non-move, but here Magnus plays queen to c1, and it is now already, as of move 8, that we have a completely new game. So very interesting chess being played here in the Julius Baer Generation Cup. In the last two games that we've covered, it was already a completely new game on move 9. Now it's on move 8. What more could we ask for? So here, bishop to g4. As the queen moved, it makes sense to put pressure on the knight here. Knight b to d2, and now knight b to d7. We have h3, challenging the bishop, and here just the bishop capture. So Arjun giving up the bishop pair early on. But he has put his pawns on light squares. The dark square bishop is nicely fianchettoed, helping out with the defense of the black king. And at some point you will try to make use of it, maybe a nice c5 breakthrough or e5, all depending on what Magnus plays. So rook e8, preparing that e5 push. It's not easy because the e5 square is controlled 3 times, so you would have to do something like move the knight for the bishop to control e5 as well. c4 by Magnus, and now queen to b6. Putting pressure on that d4 pawn. So rook to d1, and now knight to e4. We have bishop to e3 now. You could also play e3, but Magnus decides to defend the pawn with bishop to e3, as now that the knight moved, the bishop and queen are attacking this pawn. And now queen to a6. Arjun says that Magnus needs to, decide what to do with the pawn. Do you want to capture, or do you want to advance it to c5, or do you want to at some point play maybe b3? So Magnus says, I'm not doing any of that right away. First, knight to e5. It's just a very annoying move. Whenever that knight lands on e5, you just know that you can never capture it, otherwise you'll just be worse. It's just known, if you're a chess player. Here, like if you capture here, d captures, what do you play? For example, rook 8 to d8, you put the rook on the d file, c captures, let's say bishop captures on e4, d captures, rook captures on d8, rook captures, and now, for example, queen to c7. White is the one that will be putting pressure on this position. So instead, after knight e5, we have knight d to f6, and now Magnus plays queen to c2. He again puts pressure on the e4 knight, making d captures on c4 an impossible move, as then just bishop captures on e4 wins a piece. So knight to d6, now putting more pressure on that c4 pawn, and Magnus pushes it to c5. Like I said, you could consider b3, but then you just give Arjun a move that he really wants to play, and this now is with tempo. So here c5, challenging the knight to b5. You could also put it on f5. It's a very nice square for the knight, but Arjun decides to go to b5, and now Magnus plays pawn to f4. And now with this pawn to f4 push, Magnus shows that he's now ready to start pushing on the king side. Otherwise, he could also play a move like a4, dislodge this knight, for example, knight to c8, and play rook to b1, with the idea of busting open the b file, as now b4 is an actual possibility, and then you will just put pressure on the backwards b7 pawn. So okay, after knight b5, Magnus decides to go for the king side attack instead. He plays f4, a4 now by by Arjun, saying b4 will not be played this game, and now pawn to g4. And Magnus took quite a lot of time. Arjun was playing pretty much all of his moves instantly. He did spend time on a few of them, but Magnus is down already to some 8 minutes, and Arjun has well over 11 minutes. A3, of course, G5 is a threat, but Arjun makes Magnus decide what to do here on the queen side before, deciding whether he wants to push a pawn, move the knight, or what. And now Magnus plays pawn to B3, and this is the way to go. If you push pawn to B4, basically Carlsen's idea is that he wants to push pawns on the king side, and he needs to keep control over the E4 square. As long as he does that, the knight doesn't have access to E4. He's going to be fine. But now if you push pawn to B4, which is almost always a good idea. Queen a4 offers a queen trade. Then if you move the queen, you allow knight to e4. And it's not what you want to do. So b3 is the way to go. Rook a to d8 by Arjun, and now rook a to c1. Now even making queen a5 pointless, because now the c3 square is nicely guarded. So you are never giving up control of the e4 square. So knight to d7, and Arjun says, all right, I can't win more space, so maybe I can trade down, which is a good idea. If your opponent is controlling more space, you should always trade down. But now Magnus plays bishop to f2, and here it seems like he's preparing this pawn push to e4, and he wants to bust open the center. But after Arjun's pawn to e6, Magnus plays something incredible. Now you should not play this. Here a good idea would be g5, as capturing here isn't that great. Captures, you open up the f file for the white rooks, the pawns here with incredible control over the f6 square. And even if you don't do that after g5, the knight can come to g4. Now you will have knight f6, knight h6 in the future, so it's very nice. What I was super amazed here is that when I saw this position as I was watching it live, I was like, what about bishop to h4? This seems like a great move as it attacks the rook. And then I checked the engine, I checked the top 3 or 4 evaluations, and none of them were bishop to h4, so I was like, okay, I mean, my suggestion is not all that great. But then Magnus played bishop h4, and I was like, what? Both Magnus and I played a move that the engine did not recommend. Obviously, it's a strong move, but it turns out that it's not. It's actually a blunder. But it's not easy to take advantage of this blunder unless you know it's a blunder. So feel free to pause the video here and try to take advantage of this imprecision. Maybe not a blunder, but an imprecision while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on spotting this incredible idea. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it's pawn to g5. That's the move. I mean, I know, incredible. For one, if you play f captures, then you weaken the knight. Then black can start capturing on e5, and you really have nothing to worry about. If bishop captures on g5, then of course you play f6, and now you attack the bishop and the knight. And there's really no good way to handle this. If you capture the knight on d7, then just f captures on g5. Your knight is hanging now, and once you move the knight back, g captures on f4, and black solved all of his problems. Now black will be the one controlling the f file, and you have a very nice pawn on f4. So the d4 pawn is weak now. It's just an incredible position. And after g5, if you don't capture, if you play bishop to g3, not all that different. Just captures, and now the spectacular knight captures on d4, weakening the knight on e5, and after rook captures, just bishop captures here on e5. Bishop captures, knight captures, and black solved all of his problems. So really congratulations to everyone who found that. But it would seem Arjun did not think about the possibility of Magnus actually missing this, and he plays f6. Probably if he was playing against anyone else other than Magnus, he would allow for the possibility that Magnus made a mistake, but I think this was the case in this game. So knight back to f3, and now we have knight to f8. Also to be considered is b6, just trying to bust open this structure on the queen side and put pressure on the center. But he plays knight to f8. He doesn't want to allow Magnus to put pressure on the king side, and now pawn to e3. We have queen to a5, trying to get the queen into the game somehow, maybe even via the c7 square. Now bishop to f1, preparing bishop to d3. We have knight to c7, and now Magnus advances the pawn to g5. We have knight to d7, defending the f6 square. G captures on f6, bishop captures, and now Magnus captures on f6. Although to be considered is definitely pawn to b4. Just winning more space on the queen side, that's always useful. And of course, if queen captures, rook b1 followed by rook captures on b7, so you would push the black queen back to a silly square because the knight is still on c7 and queen to c7 is impossible. So always keep in mind the possibility of pawn to b4. But okay, Magnus plays bishop captures on f6, knight captures, and now bishop to d3 with the threat of bishop captures on g6, captures with the queen, then knight comes to g5. Black will fall apart here. So rook to e7, adding another defender here. You want to be ready with rook to g7. Now king to h2. And look at what Magnus has created here. Arjun can't really use the rooks well. The knight does not have a good square. This knight is on a good square, but it's not really doing all that much. And queen on a5 completely useless. And now look at all this pressure Magnus is able to put on the g6 square. The queen attacks it, the bishop attacks it, the rooks will be doubled on the g file. Both of the rooks will be attacking it, and the knight is coming to e5, most likely adding more pressure to the g6 pawn. So you can be sure that you are not going to be able to defend g6. But of course, Arjun has to try. He plays rook f8. Rook to g1 by Magnus, knight c to e8 now, preparing the rook to come to g7. The knight will nicely be defending it there. Rook to g2, just doubling up here. We have knight to g7, and here Magnus played rook c to g1. And I think Magnus here was just trying to create the perfect position, as of course he knows he can't really lose this. He didn't spend time to check this, but bishop captures on g6 can also be played here. For example, captures, and now it's I mean, how do you play this? If, let's say, knight h7, just rook g1. And if, let's say, rook to f5, whatever you play, queen h6, threatening rook captures here. If queen to c7, knight e5. So it's a similar position that Magnus is going for, but he could have went for the sacrifice right away. Then the knight comes to g6, and you are without any move. So okay, Magnus continues with rook c to g1. He did make that one chessable course attacking without sacrificing, so maybe he's just promoting it. Queen to c7 now, and this is the move that really allows Magnus to break through. Here with knight to f5, you would have Magnus definitely working for his meal. He would have to give up the bishop, and after he captures, yes, he can win a pawn, but maybe you can still defend. Let's say knight to e8, and now okay, let's say queen to c2, rook to f6. You are down material, but you are still in the game. After the move that Arjun played, queen to c7, now it no longer is possible. Now Magnus plays bishop captures on g6, h captures, queen captures, and now knight to e4. Useful square for the knight, preventing knight to g5. And now everyone was expecting knight to e5, but Magnus played knight to g5. Just for the fun of it, I will show knight to e5 because it's beautiful. Point is that after a few moves, the rook attacks the queen. For example, rook f6, queen h5, rook f5, queen h6, and rook f6. You play rook g6, and after captures, you will capture with the knight. And now queen h8, queen to f8 is unstoppable. For example, if king f7, you still play it. And after rook to e8, attacking the queen, the spectacular knight f8. Now you are threatening queen captures on g7, and there's no way to deal with this. If knight f5, just queen h7 check, king captures on f8, and rook to g8 is checkmate. Just an example of how strong the attacking potential is. But Magnus goes for a different line. He plays knight g5, knight captures, rook captures, and now we have rook to f5. Arjun wants to trade off as many attackers as possible. Again, just for the fun of it, I will show the line rook captures on f4, trying to give up a rook for some sort of a perpetual. It doesn't work because just queen g7, and that's it. Rook captures, queen captures, rook captures, king captures, and now after this brutal capture fest, you just have a completely winning king and pawn endgame. So you have to keep that in mind as well. So rook f5, and now Magnus just goes one square back. Rook 5 to g4. Interestingly, even in this position, rook to g4 is the only winning move. Rook e to f7, and now Magnus plays queen captures on e6, and he was in this position on move 40 that Arjun Erigaisi resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. The threat, of course, is rook captures on g7. The rook on f7 is pinned, and there is no way to survive this. If you move the king to f8, just a nice rook captures on g7, and now you have to remove the defender of the rook on f5. That's the truth behind the position. Queen captures on f5 check, and if you defend, Okay, you still have a queen and the rook, but it's very easy to win this. For example, queen g5, and now after king to e8, you just play queen h5. And the king can never move away from the defense of the rook, and it doesn't really matter what you try. Queen e7, just rook g7 attacks the pinned piece, and you trade down once again into a winning king and pawn endgame. Let's say queen f8, you're just gonna trade everything off, and the king and pawn endgame is winning for Magnus. So definitely a spectacular masterpiece. Magnus did allow Arjun to really take control of the position with this bishop to h4 move. I mean, can you imagine my disappointment? I thought about the move and I checked the engine and it was like, no, that's a silly move. And then Magnus plays it and I was super happy, you know, as I guess a move that Magnus would play, and that it's not one of the engine moves, but it was actually a big mistake. But both Magnus and Arjun have missed it. I didn't miss it because I didn't think about the position all that much, but I would never find this, of course. But yeah, after missing this, it was all Magnus, and now Magnus is leading the match by 1 full point, but there are still 3 more games to bounce back. We'll see what happens. Stay tuned, as I will inform you of what has happened. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Like a beautiful, beautiful attacking game by Magnus. This was just, I mean, when you saw that Magnus played this rook to g2 move and then understood that the knight is coming here and the rooks are gonna get doubled, and then g6 square will just be, you know, impossible to defend, you knew that this cannot end well for Arjun. But yeah, he did have a chance, he didn't take it, and that's obviously more than enough for Magnus to take a full point. So that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it and have learned a lot from it. I would like to thank Stuart Matthews, Derek King, Brian Parkin, Golden Pawn, and Mebdi Shuki for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the finals until it ends. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.